Chapter 2 Our Emunah conception. The Zionist credo is diametrically opposed to our beliefs and concepts. One of the fundamentals of our faith is reward for the performance of mitzvot, and punishment for averath. The reward is not only spiritual, something to be received after death, but our very life on this earth is intimately affected by this basic principle of reward and punishment. This order of reward and punishment, reward for mitzvot and punishment for averath, is a privilege for us Jews, and constitutes the loftiest elements of our constitution, the divine quality inherited from our forebears and finally confirmed on Mount Sinai. For the Torah is constituted according to divine conceptions, far above human grasp. Consequently, in the majority of both mitzvot and averath, the remoteness from human reasoning, manifest in this formulation is self-evident, but even those which seem logical enough and useful to human society, do in fact contain higher divine aspects, incomprehensible to the minds of mortals. Only the Jews, the people who are endowed with the divine quality, have been conditioned to undertake and perform these sacred functions. The order of reward and punishment is the direct consequence of their eternal and indissoluble union with God, as no other human has the possibility of being included in that order. Thus only a Jew can evoke either the punishment or the reward involved in these acts, the commandments of a purely godly aspect. Although this divine order of reward and punishment is not always discernible in the life of the individual to the human eye, yet where the whole community, Klal Israel, is concerned, it is clearly revealed in the pattern of historical sequences. We did not conquer the Holy Land in the past because we were physically superior to those whom we vanquished, neither were we driven out because of our military or political shortcomings, nor have we remained in Galat of our own free will. Even our simple daily needs at the time when we were assembled on sacred soil were fulfilled by providence for all to see. The very blessings of rain in the Holy Land were unlike the rain that pours down elsewhere, rainfall and drought, in the land on which the eyes of God rest from the beginning to the end of the year. When the Knesset Yisrael were assembled there and possessed of that status depended openly and most directly on the divine will. Moreover, all that befalls us collectively, such as, for example, our recent catastrophe at the hand of the Nazis, has quite different root causes from those to which may be attributed the calamities of other nations. Our material welfare as a group depends upon the observance of practical mitzvot such as Sabbath, kashrut, etc., however difficult it may be for the connection of kashrut and shatnez with material welfare to be grasped by the human mind, for Klal Israel by its very nature, always carries visibly the marks of identification of its divine status, and her fate reflects both divine wrath and pleasure. The course of events culminating in the destruction of the sanctuary was unfolded in a miraculous way, as we have been told by our sages. Verily, hands full of fire descended from heaven to burn the temple of God. God has crushed the strong in our midst. In his anger he cut off all the pride of Israel. At the time of our expulsion, we were not physically weaker than at the time of our entry into Eretz Yisrael, nor were our enemies more formidable. We were banished by divine decree our long Galat. The calamities which have befallen us in it's not by the hazards of war and the defeat. Moreover, throughout course, continue to defy explanation in purely natural and likewise, no convincing rational explanation physical terms. Anti-Semitism, extending to many periods of history and many can be advanced in support of the persistent phenomenon of different and widely separated territories and the uniqueness of its intensity. We cannot find a similar climate of hostility, displayed so unanimously towards any other race or people. Every single reason put forward in explanation of anti-Semitism has been confounded by subsequent events. Nor, for that matter, can even those who find themselves impelled by animosity to act against us, explain to themselves at all adequately the source or logic of this instinctive urge. This hostility and the extreme forms of savagery inflicted on us by our persecutors must be attributed to factors other than those of human causation. Let us, for instance, take the fact of Hitler's massacre of 6 million Jews, the reason for which no one has yet managed to explain. Just before the war, a Times correspondent interviewed Hitler and asked him several questions. All the questions put to him, reported the correspondent, were answered in a composed and matter-of-fact manner, until a question concerning the Jews was raised. At this Hitler went into a frenzy. He jumped up from his seat, gesticulated wildly, screaming and shouting to such an extent, utterances, that the correspondent was unable to catch the sense of his. Sir Winston Churchill, in his war memoirs, also mentions this aspect of Hitler's irrational hatred of the Jews, and recounts a similar incident which made him lose his only opportunity of meeting Hitler as a result of raising the Jewish question. Just before his rise to power, the then Mr. Churchill visited Munich. Hitler, wishing to take this opportunity of meeting him, sent a contact man to his hotel for the purpose of having a political talk with this outstanding British statesman. During the conversation with the contact man, Churchill happened to mention the subject of Hitler's anti-Jewish policy, saying that this was something which baffled him to hate people for the sole reason that they were born Jews. When the contact man reported back this remark to his boss, the response was to cancel the appointment. Who can really fathom the significance of the fact that at the time when Hitler's Germany was fighting for its life, and when every pair of hands were needed for the war effort, he preferred to destroy 6 million Jews who would have been only too willing to be obedient slaves in Hitler's war machine in return for their lives. It might well have turned out that this addition of manpower might have balanced the scales in his favor in this race for bigger production. Why did Hitler feel impelled to withdraw tens of thousands of SS brutes from the fighting line in order to employ them in his devilish extermination process at Auschwitz and Treblinka, in order to destroy the very source of manpower, which might have brought him great advantages and the attainment of victory? Which of us, while pondering over these facts, can fail to see the relevance to them of these unforgettable verses of Hazini? For a fire flames in my wrath, and shall blaze into the lowest hell, and shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire the foundations of the mountains. I will exhaust my evils upon them, I will spend mine arrows upon them. They shall be emaciated with hunger, and devoured with burning heat, and with bitter destruction. I will also send forth the teeth of beasts upon them, with the fury of those crawling in the dust. The sword without, and horror within, shall destroy both the young man and the virgin, the suckling with the man of grey hairs. Oh, that they were wise, that they understood this, that they would consider their latter end, except that God has sold them, and the Eternal had delivered them. The application of these verses to a work of destruction calculated from every point of view, moral, political, propaganda, military and economic, to hinder everything else that some of Hitler hoped to achieve, was clear to victims. A young rabbinical scholar, who suffered in Auschwitz, once seized the opportunity of asking his SS torturer why he was behaving in that way and received the reply, "I don't know, I am just obeying orders." When he was asked what was the purpose of those orders, he said, "They don't know themselves." The rabbinical scholar made the following instructive comment on this conversation: "After that I could no longer see SS and gas chambers in Auschwitz, but I could see only verses, Sukkim from Tanakh, moving in front of my eyes in the full living horror of their fulfillment." Not only this recent catastrophe but the whole path of blood and tears leading throughout the long gallop cannot be understood otherwise, but Zionism, with its kafira approach, has desecrated all the holy and fundamental truths, diverted the Jewish way of thought into a temporal direction and marched roughshod over ideals, values and beliefs, sacred to the Jewish people. Instead of drawing the right conclusions and accepting the manifestation of God's will as a rebuke, they deliberately took advantage of the confusion which reigned after that stunning blow, to exploit it for their own political ends, which are, in fact, the very reverse of those designed for his people. The mighty Zionist propaganda machine set to work soon after the conflagration to distort and misinterpret the meaning of the event by allegedly logical reasoning. This happened, they shouted from the rooftops, because the Zionist idea was not accepted long ago, because we did not have the means to defend ourselves and to fight back. We must therefore arm ourselves on a territory of our own, and once our Zionist nation has been established, our future will be secure.